I became slightly famous and came into the limelight when this story was published in Times of India a couple of years back. It was a follow-up to a naive tweet asking if I am the first and the only transgender person to become the Nodal Officer of a COVID-19 vaccination centre. Unfortunately, I was the only one. So yes, I am the first and the only Nodal Officer till date of a COVID-19 vaccination centre who identifies as a transgender person. I am also one of the first transgender medical doctors in India, and I am the only transgender medical educator in India at present. While all these firsts show us how challenging it is for transgender persons to become doctors or get into positions of authority or power, it also tells us that it is possible, that it is doable. Today, we will be discussing about these challenges and these possibilities and successes. So I was born in Bombay in 1983 in a chawl. I was the third child to my family. I have two elder brothers. And in 1986, 3 years later, I was sent to an all-boys school. This is a photo from my school. Can any one of you guess which one of them is me?
Specs.
Any idea?
The one with the specs.
The one at the farthest right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Because of the specs?
Yes.
I got my specs only 3 years back. Well, I am not in that photo. Cheating, yeah? So I do not have a single photo from my school days. I was almost invisible at that point of time. While I was raised as a boy by my parents, by my family, I always had the inclination or the feeling that I am a girl. And I went to an all-boys school. And I did not have a single friend in my childhood. I do have a lot of them now. I could not speak with anyone about my experience. So, in the schools, naturally what happens to all the feminine children is that you get bullied, you get teased. When puberty hit, I was disgusted by what was happening in my body. I wanted it to stop, I wanted that experience to stop, and I could not speak about it with anyone. I was getting attracted to men, while all the other boys in my class were getting attracted to girls. And I could not speak about this experience with anyone because I was teased and bullied about it. So naturally, I was sad, lonely and depressed child in the school. And I came out of the school without a single friend, but with a rank in the state merit list. And that's how I got into one of the most prestigious medical colleges in India. It was my parents' dream that I become a doctor. And when I entered the medical college, I thought, wow, finally I'll be in a space where people will be able to understand me, where I will be able to understand myself, and where I will be able to find help. Unfortunately, even in the medical college, I did not find a single person with whom I could talk about my experience. In fact, the spaces in the medical college were so gender segregated that the boys sat on one side and the girls sat on another side. And I had this dilemma as to where should I sit as someone who identifies as a woman but has the appearance of a male person at that point of time. And as I navigated through the medical education system, I realized that the medical education system is extremely gender segregated. It's quite gender dysphoric. and a very bullying kind of experience. As you know, the medical college ragging is quite infamous. And therefore, all these tensions had started to increase, my agony had started to increase. In the first year of the medical college, we were taken to a dissection hall full of cadavers or dead human bodies. There were some dead males and there were some dead females. But there were no dead transgender or intersex bodies. And I've been asking this question to all the anatomists I meet if they have ever seen a transgender cadaver or an intersex cadaver. And the answer, unfortunately, is no. So that day when we were introduced to the normal, quote-unquote, human bodies, the exclusion of transgender and intersex bodies was a message to us that these bodies are considered abnormal. Then we went into another subject in the first year of the medical college called physiology, where we were told how to examine a human body. And for doing that, male student volunteers were used. They were asked to remove their shirts, lie down on the table, as a group of students examined them. As an apparently male person, I had no choice but to do the same. I removed my shirt, lied down on the table, as tens of students, boys and girls, and maybe some more, touched me, examined me. At that moment, I felt like I was being molested. But I did not have the courage to say that I can't do this. I didn't have the agency or excuse to say no. Today, when I reflect back on that experience, I wonder if this is problematic only for gender diverse individuals, or should it be a potential problem for everyone? Where is the agency to say yes or no? Where is the principle of consent? And all this agony kept on building slowly. When you are suffering, but you cannot even show that you are suffering. Then the next subject came in our medical schools. We were now in the second year of our medical school. And we were taken to the operation theatres. The same operation theatres that we had only seen in the movies with a red bulb. Now, in those operation theatres, before you enter those operation theatres, you are supposed to change into scrubs. Okay. While the women had a changing room with individual cubicles, the men all changed in one room in front of each other. Now, as an apparently male person, I had no choice but to change and undress in front of other men. And that felt horrible. Again, I could not talk about it. Then as I went into the third year of the medical college, words like homosexuality, sodomy, lesbianism, gender identity disorder were all staring back at me from my textbooks in the subject called forensic medicine. And these terms and these experiences were then taught to us as diseases, as mental illnesses, as crimes under section 377, and this was taught to us by our teachers, by the books. How then could I have the courage to say that, hey, maybe this is also my experience? Because this made me feel like a sick, deranged pervert. This was becoming very agonizing. Things started to deteriorate, and finally my BP had started increasing, and that's when I decided to seek consultation or medical advice. I went to the doctor, and that was the first time when I talked about my experience. And through long consultations in psychiatry, finally I had a label to my experience. I was given the tag of gender identity disorder. It was called a disorder in those days, thankfully no longer now. But I was happy to even get that label of a disease or disorder, because I finally could tell someone that this is who I am. It gave me the courage to understand that it was not my mistake, that I did not bring it upon myself, and that there are many more people like me in this world who have a similar experience. Armed with this knowledge and confidence, I then started coming out to my friends and to my family. I thought that these students who are becoming the future doctors will understand, will sympathize. But all I got was curious glances, silent stares, and misunderstanding. And from my family, I got a series of reactions ranging from denial, rejection, to even anger. While I wanted to transform and transition at that point of time and become the woman that I always identified myself as, I realized that it won't be possible during that time and place. So in the third year of my MBBS where I was, I decided to continue living the life of a man. But nonetheless, now I had an MBBS degree and I had become a doctor. And it was time now to choose for the subject in the post-graduation course. I wanted to choose a degree or a specialization in which I didn't have to study much further because I was mentally exhausted of studying MBBS. So I decided I'll go for a course which finishes very quickly. I'd already spent 5.5 years in MBBS and in which I do not have to stay in a boys' hostel because most of the resident doctors have to stay in the hostel and staying in the boys' hostel would be a nightmare for me. So I chose community medicine and I did that in the same college, went through 3 years of grind and came out with an MD in community medicine. Having done this, I realized that it's time now to move on. So I decided to go to a city where I did not have a single known person, and that city was New Delhi. So I came to New Delhi in 2011 and I joined Jamia Hamdard University, where I continue to teach today even after 10 years. My time in Jamia Hamdard was quite interesting. I had literally ran away from home. I was making new friends. I was falling in love. I was getting my heart broken. And I was also coming out to other people, my students, my colleagues. And all this was happening simultaneously. But the decision that I took that day changed the trajectory of my life. I finally decided to stop living this lie. I finally decided to start living my truth. And I finally decided to be me. In 2017, I started the process of my transition medically. And in 2019, I became Aqsa Shaikh. And I want to say this loud and clear, that unlike what people expected, by changing or by affirming my gender, I did not bring shame to anyone. I have only brought pride to my family and to everyone. Well, I'm very conscious of my privilege of getting an education and a medical education and a job and a secure income. Many transgender people in India, and we have around 5 lakh of them, do not have this privilege. Many transgender people do not even get the education, the basic education or admission in schools. Even if they get admitted in the schools, they drop out because of the incessant trolling and abuse which can sometimes be physical or sexual abuse. Without an education, then transgender people do not get jobs. In our system where even postgraduate students are finding it difficult to get jobs today. So most of the transgender people get involved in some kind of traditional occupation like Basti Badhai, where they visit the homes where newborns are and give blessings, or you may see them begging on traffic signals or in the trains, or you may see them doing sex work. Now, while education is important and jobs are important, many trans people find it extremely difficult to get educated or get jobs. But there are people who are getting educated now. But in spite of that, just being a visibly trans person can act as a lot of stigma or barrier into getting jobs or into accessing the healthcare system. A lot of trans people who have ample amount of money are still not able to go to a private hospital and access healthcare because of the stigma that is surrounding them. In such a situation, when transgender people are not able to access healthcare, some of the transgender people are becoming doctors. I'm very happy to share that while I was one of the first transgender doctor in India, today we have nearly 25 transgender doctors and medical students in India. And there are hundreds of queer folks who are becoming doctors. So we can say that finally the white coat has got the rainbow, has got the pride. In 2019, a landmark law was made, that is the Transgender Persons Protection of Rights Act, which protected trans people from discrimination in education, employment and healthcare. But a very paradigm shift came in 2021 when the Madras and the Kerala High Court pointed out to the queerphobia and the transphobia which is present in medical curriculum within the medical textbooks. In such a scenario where trans people cannot save the lives of their near and dear ones by donating a pint of their blood, some transgender people are becoming doctors and saving the lives in their own innovative ways. While we may have been the first ones to become doctors, this is a photograph of all trans and queer doctors and nurses. So while we may have been the first ones to do that, we shall not be the last. The white coat will have a rainbow. I will now be presenting a small poem. ये हिंदी में एक कविता है, ये बातचीत है, गुफ्तगू है एक ट्रांसजेंडर बच्चे और उसके परिवार के बीच। परिवार वाले, समाज वाले कहते हैं, ऐसे ना चला करो, ऐसे ना हंसा करो, ऐसे ना रोया करो, ऐसे ना देखा करो, ऐसे ना दिखा करो, ऐसी ना बातें करो, ऐसे ना बैठा करो। अरे कुछ तो सोचा करो कि लोग क्या कहेंगे। दुपट्टा न गिरने पाए, दाग न दिखने पाए, आंसू न गिरने पाए, हंसी न खिलने पाए, नजर न उठने पाए, आवाज न निकलने पाए, जहन न खुलने पाए। अरे कुछ तो लिहाज करो कि लोग क्या कहेंगे। मर्द हो तो मर्द रहो, स्त्री हो तो स्त्री रहो, समाज में ऐसे जियो, समाज में वैसे जियो। हमारे यहाँ यही होता है, हमारे यहाँ तो यही होगा, बड़ों को सब पता है, तुम्हारा सर फिरा है। कुछ तो लिहाज करो कि लोग क्या कहेंगे। अब के किन्नर बन जाओगे, भीख मांगते रह जाओगे, शादी में ढोल बजाओगे या ट्रेन में जाकर गाओगे, इज्जत मिट्टी में मिलाओगे, नाक हमारी कटाओगे। कुछ तो शर्म करो कि लोग क्या कहेंगे। हमारे ये संस्कार नहीं, ट्रांस हमें स्वीकार नहीं। हमारे ये संस्कार नहीं, ट्रांस हमें स्वीकार नहीं, ये करके तुम पछताओगे, मां से मिल न पाओगे। मर गए समझो हमारे लिए, बंद दरवाजे तुम्हारे लिए। अरे ये सब कैसे सहेंगे, लोग क्या कहेंगे। इस पे बच्चा कहता है, बोलना सीखा तुमसे ही, पर बातें मेरे मन की है। चलना सीखा तुमसे ही, पर राह चुनी मन की है। उंगली जब थामी थी तो सोचा था साथ निभाओगे, मैं जब मैं बन जाऊं तो मुझको गले लगाओगे। हाथ छुड़ाकर अब ऐसे क्यों बेगाना तुम करते हो? प्यार तो मुझसे करते हो पर दुनिया से तुम डरते हो। फर्क तुम्हें बस पड़ता है कि लोग क्या कहेंगे। साथ तुम्हारा होता तो हर मुश्किल से लड़ लेते। दुनिया के ताने तो क्या, हर चीज को हम सह लेते। सारी दुनिया एक तरफ, अपने होते हैं एक तरफ। अब ठुकरा कर पहचान मिली, मुझको कहते हो हर पे गलत। फर्क तुम्हें बस पड़ता है कि लोग क्या कहेंगे। अरे कुछ तो लोग कहेंगे, वो लोग हैं भगवान नहीं, खुदा की मैं मखलूक हूं तो क्या मैं भी इंसान नहीं? हमाम में सारे नंगे हैं और लाज लाज तुम करते हो। लोगों की सोच के डरते हो और डरते डरते मरते हो। अरे कुछ तो लोग कहेंगे, लोगों का काम है कहना। लोग क्या कहेंगे सोच, क्या छोड़ दे अब हम जीना, क्या छोड़ दे अब हम जीना।